So there's just a list of questions that were entered into the Google form. And the first question was, what is your typical workday like as the manager of marketing and business development at Ingenio?
Great question. And first off, I just want to thank Christine and Caitlin and Angela and the rest of the Cash Club team for having me here. It's an honor to speak to you guys. I remember, especially when I was a student and in a lot of your shoes, I wish I had more access to programs like this. So I love what you guys are doing. And everyone can call me Nat. My name is Natali. And I've been Nat ever since I went off to college. So feel free to call me Nat. And to answer your question, Christine, there is no typical workday in my job, and that's what I love about it. I wear many hats in my marketing and business development role at Ingenio, and I guess my day-to-day consists of a lot of data analysis and reporting, a lot of partner management, which is essentially very client-facing types of recurring meetings, and then lots of internal cross-functional meetings between the marketing and product team and meetings between the marketing analytics team. Those are two of kind of our biggest partners in the business world. And I do have somewhat of a routine I like to follow in my day-to-day role. And typically I like to spend most of my mornings looking at dashboards and reporting. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with data analytics tools like, Tableau or Looker, and of course Excel. So those are some of the things that I do in the morning. I always like to monitor and track as a marketer, how much money am I spending on my advertising campaigns, and how many new customers am I driving from each of those campaigns, and then in return, how much money are those customers spending on Ingenio's platform to gauge how my campaigns are performing. And in addition to that, I do have a direct report, a marketing associate that I check in with regularly. And I'm kind of a new manager, or fairly new, I guess, since COVID started. So that's definitely a big part of my role, is ensuring that my marketing associate is set up for success there. And throughout the week, I do have lots of regular recurring meetings with my partners, because within my marketing function at Ingenio, I'm in a very client-facing role, and I'm essentially advertising our platform through a different set of partners, whether that's agencies or media publishers or influencers or websites that drive a lot of organic traffic. It's kind of a mixed bag, but so I do have lots of regular recurring meetings with them as well. And we're always thinking about, how can we drive better results, and how can we drive more growth, mutual growth, both for us and for our partners.
The second question was, how did you get into marketing, business, and finance in the first place?
Great question. So going into college, I had no idea what I want to do. And to be honest, I just turned 27 years old and I'm still learning. And I think it's great that we can have that flexibility. But when I was in college, I went to Duke and I studied markets and management, which was essentially like a combination of marketing and business fundamentals. And that was kind of my first intro to business, marketing, and finance. And I think what I loved learning when I was in school was I love learning about how brands, tell stories and come to life. And I loved learning about how businesses operate and kind of the basics of financial accounting and what it takes to run a business, and then how other elements like, individuals and global economies kind of contribute to businesses overall. And with marketing, one thing I learned both in school and more on the job is it's a very good combination of both analytical and problem solving skills and creativity. And I really like using both those kinds of parts of my brain together.
Is there anything you suggest that students should be doing right now, especially in quarantine, to help them succeed in the marketing field?
Great question. And I would say that this is for everything, not just marketing. I'm sure that a lot of you are still figuring out what you want to do. And I'd say that take advantage of all the resources that you have at your disposal. I think, I was in college 8 years ago, and I think the amount of resources that students continue to have is just growing, even while in quarantine. So I really encourage you all to seize the opportunities that you have to network with all of your peers and your professors and engage in different coursework and with different students. And I know that's a little bit more challenging right now given everything is remote, but the beauty of technology is that there are all these other tools that we can leverage. So even thinking about me right now in my role, like I'm still going out of my way to broaden my skill set or learn something new, whether that's through free educational resources like LinkedIn Learning is a great tool, and they have a massive library of resources, or taking a General Assembly class or a master class. I think these are the kinds of things that will help you all, especially those of you that are students, to figure out what it is that you're good at. What do you like and what do you don't like, and what motivates you, and use that to kind of like build out your career path. And what I would say is, like, you don't have to have it figured it out. You don't have to have it all figured out right now. That's the beauty of being young and talented. And the fact that you guys are here right now on a Sunday listening to me tells me that you guys are doing something right. You guys are going out of your way to learn from other people. And I think that's something that I would tell you guys to continue to do, especially during quarantine.
Yeah, speaking about that, are there any other tips you have for high school students interested in those sectors?
Yeah, I'd say to read, honestly. One thing, like in high school, particularly for me, I had a very basic public high school education, and I didn't get exposed to any of these sectors or areas until I went off to college. So I'd say, read and learn about what each of these different fields mean. Read about marketing, about finance, about economics, about engineering. And if you do have access to this different type of coursework while you're in high school, I definitely would encourage you to branch out. And, you won't really learn about these fields until you experience them for yourself. So whether that's in the classroom or just talking to someone like me or anyone else that has a career path that you aspire to kind of take on at some point, just talk to them. I think right now more than ever, people are looking for more people to talk to. So it's so amazing for me to be here talking to you guys because, during quarantine, we have such limited access to human interaction anyway. So take advantage of what you can right now.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And that leads us to the next question, which is, what are some things you wished you learned earlier on in your career?
Yeah. I can like relive this. So for me, one of the toughest challenges going from college into the real world is, for me, it kind of came all at once. Like right after graduation, I kind of had no break and then moved to a new city and got a new full-time job. So I moved across the country from Durham, North Carolina to San Francisco, California. And that was my first time not only earning a steady paycheck, but also my first time having my very own monthly expenses. And that was challenging for me. I was like really blessed throughout school to have supportive parents that, paid for my tuition, my room and board. And right after graduation, I was kind of on my own, and I was pretty unprepared for what that meant. So I never took any kind of budgeting class or talked to my parents about monthly budgeting and expenses. So when I moved to San Francisco, which is the most expensive housing market in America, everything that came with that was hard. Monthly rent was hard, phone bill, utilities, my first ever credit card. There was a lot I didn't know. So I didn't realize like how much money would be deducted, from my bi-monthly paycheck to taxes and insurance, or that bonuses were taxed at higher rates. I kind of had to learn all of that on the fly. And I think the fact that all of you guys are members of the Cash Club group probably means that you guys already know a lot more than I did when I first graduated college and jumped into the real world. But I guess I'd encourage you guys to kind of figure that out sooner rather than later. And what's great is, again, there are so many apps and websites and budgeting tools, Mint, where you can break out and figure out how much money you're going to be spending on, essential living expenses, and how much you can tuck away and start saving or start investing.
Speaking of college and jumping into the new world, in college, what did you do that was helpful in starting your career?
Yeah. Um, I think the best thing that I did and I continue to do is to say yes to any opportunities that come your way. I know it sounds really simple, but you're going to experience both in the real world and in school, professors asking for favors or for volunteers, or even just asking, your lecturer a question. And I think any opportunity that you can have to speak up and get in front of your peers and your mentors and your professors and your bosses or your boss's bosses, say yes. I think managing a workload is obviously important. So you have to make sure that you can do what you're signing up for. But one thing that's really helped me throughout my career and even where I am today is saying yes to all of those opportunities. That's what's enabled me to get a lot of face time, for example, with my CEO and different executives. And it shows people that you're dedicated and passionate about what you do. And I think taking initiative is one thing that will really help you all. And then it continues to help me kind of climb the corporate ladder. And I think that that's something that as a woman in particular is even more important for us.
That's very interesting. And the next question is, what are your favorite and least favorite things about your job?
Yeah, so in my marketing role at Ingenio, one of my favorite things about my job is I'm really able to make an impact and see that impact. And that's because I work for a pretty small company. I work for a startup. We're about 100 employees. We've been around for a while now, but working for a smaller company means number one, you have a lot of responsibility, and number two, you have a lot of accountability. So with that responsibility means, you're really held accountable to your job. And when I think back right out of college, I got my first job was at Oracle, which is a big Fortune 500 company. I was one of tens of thousands of employees. And I learned pretty quickly at Oracle that no matter how well I did, I never felt like I was making an impact. No matter how much revenue you're driving, you're working for a $1 billion corporation. And so I learned pretty quickly at Oracle that I wanted to work for a smaller company where I could really see that tangible impact and I'd be able to kind of get that recognition and progress my career in a quicker way. So in my role now, for example, in marketing, I know exactly how much revenue I contribute to our business, and that really motivates me. So, for example, I can see that I'm driving, over $2 million in revenue to our business every month, and to see that amount like growing over time from, 700,000 a month when I first started, that really excites me and motivates me. And I haven't been in the office since pre-COVID, but when we're there, I sit directly in front of my CEO, and he fist bumps me and high fives me for my good work, and he can just call me into his office to ask me a question or to give me kudos. And I love that small kind of startup environment. In marketing, I also really love collaborating and working cross-functionally. Marketing is a big partner for different areas of the business. Like I mentioned, product and analytics. So I love working with those teams and kind of expanding my skill set and getting exposure to those areas of the business as well. While I'm kind of like an independent person and a self-starter, I'm a people person. So I definitely need a job where I'm talking to people, whether those are, internal partners or external clients. I'm not someone that can be, head deep in spreadsheets all day for several hours of the day. And then on the flip side, to answer the second part of your question, my least favorite thing about my job, and I think this is the case for any job, and you guys will experience it, but I'm a very competitive person and I'm a perfectionist to a fault, and failure is something that I've had to learn to accept in the real world, and I'm sure many of you will too. And I'm lucky to be at a company where we have kind of a learn fast, fail fast mentality, and making mistakes is part of the job description. If you're not making mistakes or if you've never experienced not hitting a goal, then that means you're either not learning or you're not challenging yourself enough. And in marketing specifically, for example, sometimes an investment on a campaign, whether it's a paid social campaign on Facebook or maybe a media buy with Refinery 29, sometimes that campaign is not going to yield the return we expected, or maybe a return at all. And so what that means is the money I spent to advertise for a specific campaign did not result in equal or greater revenue from the customers that I drove through that campaign. And that happens. And it's important for me when that happens to take a step back and break down all the results and understand, what we gained from that campaign and think about the big picture. So for example, like, oh, maybe we didn't drive $50,000 in customer revenue like we planned, but we gained, 300 followers on Instagram, or 10 million people were exposed to our ad. And that's really important from a brand perspective. Those are some of the other things that we're thinking about as marketers. But of course, we do experience some campaigns do not yield the results that we're looking for. And it's important to not be attached to outcomes. That's something that I've learned from my boss, and to take the wins and take the losses too, and move on to the next thing. Be very adaptable.
And I think that leads us to the next question, which is, what obstacles did you face when you first got into the workforce, and possibly as a woman in a more male-dominated field as well?
Yeah, I touched on this a little bit before, but I've learned that sometimes we as women have to do a little bit more than our male counterparts, or speak up more in order to climb the corporate ladder. So some things that I've noticed throughout my career is, right out of college in my business development role at Oracle, I noticed that the incoming class of BD reps was, 60 to 70% male. So that's something that already is just kind of in the back of our minds. And even more than that, when I'm in the office, I noticed that a majority of the people in leadership positions, so directors, C-suites, execs, were male. The more you go up, the more men that we see. And I think that's pretty common in tech and most other fields that you guys will experience. But one thing that led me to do, and I encourage all of you to do, is I went out of my way to join communities like this one that you guys have right now, and communities of women, to network and learn from each other and engage in productive conversations about women in leadership. And there are so many groups out there. I mean, you guys are a part of one right now. But it's great to join these events, whether they're in person or virtual, and learn about how we can educate and empower women around the world. And those types of groups and communities have been very helpful for me in my career, and not just understanding, businesses and how leadership structures work, but also in gaining the confidence to speak up and have these conversations, and to just learn from some really successful, powerful women.
The next question is, what is the biggest marketing strategy that you wish you knew about earlier?
Sorry, can you repeat that? Sorry.
What is the biggest marketing strategy that you wish you knew about earlier?
That's a good one. I guess the biggest marketing strategy that I wish I had learned about sooner, probably when I first joined my job at Ingenio, and this touches back to my first point, probably that it's okay to make mistakes, and it's not the end of the world if the money you spend on a campaign doesn't yield a return. But one of the main strategies behind marketing, and specifically paid marketing, is you always want to acquire, there's kind of a balancing act. You always want to drive customers at the lowest cost possible. So a big part of my job is negotiating with different partners and advertisers to come to agreements where we are always paying a very efficient amount of money for our campaigns. And sometimes that's negotiating to try to get lower rates. And being really flexible in those situations is important. Like if I'm talking to a partner and we want to run, let's say, a $50,000 campaign, I might try to negotiate and work my way down to $40K or $30K, and in return throw in some bonuses for the partner. Think about what are some ways that we can incentivize them to drive more customers without spending as much money. That's always kind of something that marketers are thinking about.
And this next question was asked multiple times, and it was,
Okay.
what is your greatest advice in general?
My greatest advice in general is, especially to a lot of you that are still students and figuring out maybe what you want to do, is it's okay to not have it figured out. You'll figure it out once you're learning in school and on the job. I just turned 27 and I'm actually still learning what motivates me and drives me. And I'm someone that really values learning, and I love that I'm still learning something new in my job almost every day. And if I'm not learning anything new, then that means I'm not challenging myself. And that's when, for me, things start to tell me that it's time for me to take on a new skill or a new campaign or a new project. So I'd encourage you guys to just figure out what you want to do by talking to people, exploring different courses. Like if you're interested in economics, I encourage you to take a liberal arts course and branch out. The more you can expose yourself to different walks of life and different cultures and different people and different coursework and different areas of business, the more you'll learn about what motivates you and drives you. Because, happiness is important. And when you guys get into the real world and start working a job, you're going to be working at least 5 days a week, at least 40 hours a week, if not more. So I think it's important that you think about what you can do for that long that still motivates you and makes you happy.
And this last question is, in marketing and managing, what would you say is the most important skill to develop?
Yeah, this is a good one. It sounds very, very simple, but communication in my role is by far the most important skill. And I think many of you guys will experience that in whatever profession you decide to follow. It sounds so basic, right? Being able to talk to people, but it's often harder than it seems. In marketing and in business development, you're in a client-facing role. So you're going to be working with all different kinds of people with different personalities and different goals. So it's really important to know not only what to say, but how to say it and when to say it. And so I learned a lot about communication and public speaking and presenting on the job, but also I went out of my way to take different courses. Like I took a business improv course, for example, through General Assembly. And I learned a lot about kind of how tone impacts what you say and how you interact with people and engage with people. So I'd encourage you guys to develop your communication skills while in school. Like I said, even if it's just raising your hand when a professor asks a question and speaking in front of the class, or taking advantage of opportunities, in group projects to take ownership over the presentation piece, for example. You're going to be speaking to people when you're working in the real world a lot, whether that's just your coworkers or even clients and customers. And it's important that you put your best foot forward. And the more practice you can get in communicating, the better.
Thank you so much. That's all the questions we had in the Google form. And we're now going to be opening up if the audience has any last minute questions to ask.
I think I saw a question in the chat from Grant. Did you study any data analytics in college? It seems like a really fascinating focus. I took a very basic level of data analytics courses in college, probably like 1 to 2 courses. And I love this part of my job. Marketers can't do what they do without looking at data. I pride myself on being a data-driven person, and I think you'll see this in a lot of marketers' job descriptions or in people's skill set. It's very important. All the decisions that we're making, there's always data behind it. So I really love looking at numbers in order to make decisions, and the way brands come to life is also driven by data. So you can't really get creative until you have the numbers behind that help build that story. And if any of you are, numbers driven individuals and you like looking at data to solve problems or unlock growth, I think marketing or marketing analytics or even product marketing or product management could be some great careers for you all to explore.
I had another quick question to add on to that. So I was wondering, I know data analytics is big for marketing, but are there other, have you seen other applications within other parts of your industry?
Yeah, definitely. So I guess in terms of tools that would be helpful in the marketing role, Google Analytics is a great one. And that's another analytics tool alongside Tableau that I use pretty regularly. A lot of marketers and business development managers might also use Salesforce, which is this great CRM tool. SEMrush is a great marketing tool that helps you understand your kind of keyword rankings in Google and help you understand what your competitors are doing. But yeah, I'd say those are probably the top tools that I use on a regular day-to-day basis. I see another question from Miranda. How did you choose the business concentration that was right for you, marketing rather than administration or finance? Great question, Miranda. When I was in college, and most of you guys will experience this in school as well, but there's likely a basic level of courses that you need to knock out that are just the required courses. And then you kind of can expand into your major and minor. And I learned pretty quickly in school that I was both a creative person and an analytical thinker. So I did not want to spend a majority of my college years doing economics and finance, not only because I wasn't that good at it, but I wasn't that passionate about it. So I knocked off what I could, and I really liked exploring more of the strategic and creative courses in marketing and kind of business operations and business fundamentals. And all of them have helped me today. So even the finance and more economic focused courses that I took, I actually, about a year ago, I was within my current role, I dedicated some of my time to work with our private equity firm doing some sourcing for Ingenio. So basically, I was supporting our investors and analysts in sourcing new business deals for Ingenio to acquire. And I came pretty far along the process for several of those deals and had to work on financial models and figure out, if this business fit our portfolio and what, the 1, 3, 5-year outlook looked like. And while that was very exciting for me because it was new to me compared to my traditional kind of marketing role at Ingenio, and while I did good at it, I did well at it, it definitely, I wasn't super passionate about the financial modeling parts. I was very passionate about meeting with those businesses and figuring out how we could potentially partner and grow together and establishing those relationships and managing those relationships and being creative about what an integration would look like. But when it came down to the revenue modeling, I wasn't as excited about it. So I just learned on the job and in school what I liked and what I didn't like, what I was good at and what I wasn't as good at. And I went from there.
I had a quick question about networking. What is your experience in the professional field? Can you speak a little bit more about networking and trying to find the best job opportunities that way?
Definitely. Great question, Rishi, especially now given everything is remote and online. Networking is more challenging, but also more and more important in the job market today. This is the other kind of best advice I could give you guys, in addition to just taking initiative, is, and this falls within it, but network. And for me, a lot of that has been through the network I built in school. So a lot of the networking that I've done in the real world, you'd be surprised. The world is smaller than we think, and you are going to cross paths with a previous colleague or professor or friend of a friend. And what's great is we have so many tools that we can use to network right now while being remote. LinkedIn is a great one. I continue to stay in touch with my colleagues through LinkedIn and the people I went to school with through LinkedIn. And when I have been looking for jobs right out of college and in between Oracle and Ingenio, I primarily networked. Another thing, if you guys are currently looking for jobs, that I would encourage you to do in the job search process is reach out to someone at that company and ask them if they'd be willing to have, a 15 or 20 minute, virtual coffee chat with you. Reach out to someone's role that you aspire to be at, and just tell them, hey, I'm interested in this company. I'm interested in what you do. You have a career path that's really inspiring to me, and I'd love to hear more from you about what it's like to work at XYZ company and how you got to where you're at today. And you'd be surprised at how many people would be willing to talk to you. That's definitely helped me throughout my career. And it's a great opportunity to meet new people. Like I said, we're so limited with human interaction right now, and people are more than willing to take, 20 minutes out of their day to speak with you about who they are and what they do. And especially for all of you that are younger students right now and going to be, if not already are, on the job market, that's a great opportunity. I've learned, and maybe this is something unique to San Francisco and Silicon Valley, but networking and referrals really gives you a leg up in the job search process. So if you can get a referral for a job at a company, and you can do that through networking, then that will put you straight through, past the recruiter call, at least, to a real first interview. So the more that you can network and get those referrals, the easier the job process will be.
That's great advice. Thank you. So it looks like Isabel has a question. She says, what was working in Hawaii like?
Oh, for those that don't know, the beauty of working remote, I actually had the opportunity to live in Hawaii for a month. I was in Kauai, and since everything's working remote, our office is pretty flexible on where you can work. They trust us to do our jobs no matter where we are. So I took the opportunity to travel and knock something off my bucket list, and it was awesome. It was, to be honest, quite challenging with the time difference, because Hawaii was sometimes 4 hours behind until the time changed, 4 hours behind California, and then 3 hours. So my alarm was going off at 4 a.m. and I was going to bed at 8 or 9 p.m. But I made it work, and it was great. If you guys do have the opportunity to at some point travel, I know the job life is going to be remote, probably at least in San Francisco until the summer of 2021. So if you have the opportunity to live somewhere or travel and you're passionate about it, I encourage you guys to do what you got to do to keep yourselves happy and keep yourselves sane during this time.
Natali.
Hi.
It's Norlie. What would you tell your younger self in college that you wish you would have done that you didn't do?
This goes back to the Hawaii question. My biggest regret in college is not taking advantage of some of the Duke immersive programs. Right. I know so many universities right now. I mean, a lot of you guys are probably part of different clubs and organizations and groups, and I feel like I could have done more on that regard. There was one particular program called Duke Engage, and you had to apply, obviously, but I guess wasn't as aware about it or informed about it, and I didn't go out of my way to apply, but you were able to immerse yourself in a different, city around the world and learn about the community, contribute to the community, take a course there. And that's something that I didn't take advantage of, that opportunity, and I wish I had. So I encourage all of you guys that are students to take advantage of those awesome opportunities that your universities have to offer, because once you get into the real world and you start to settle down, it's a little bit harder to find those opportunities. When you're on a campus and you're a part of a university, you have them right at your doorstep. So knock on all the doors that you have in front of you, and take advantage of those.
Thank you.
Great question.
I don't know if we have any more questions. Feel free to speak up if you do. So if we don't have any more questions, I think that sums up today's guest speaker event. Thank you so much, Nat, for taking your time out of the day to speak with us and share your experiences and answer all these questions. I think I can speak for all of us when I say that this has been really valuable and it's been so helpful. And I don't know if people are comfortable with it, but can I take a screenshot with everyone with their cameras on? If you guys can turn your cameras on. If not, that's okay too.
That's fine by me.